afternoon, and welcome to the Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting for April 25th, 2023. The elected body present, Mayor Kurt Wilson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Michael Palermo, Councilmember Sarah Beeson, Councilmember G. Lee Hills, Councilmember William Morthland. The purpose of committee meetings are for city departments to convey information to mayor and city council and discuss the initiatives listed on the published agenda by ordinance. The committee consists of the mayor, members of city council and city administrator, and the city administrator serves as chair of the committee meetings by ordinance. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is certainly open to the public, we do not take public comments at committee meetings unless specifically authorized by mayor and council. Public comments and questions are received at regular city council meetings on the second and fourth Monday of each month at 7:00 p.m. in the city council chambers, as well as on the fifth Monday in open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage our online platforms. If you have any questions or need information from the city staff and talent, we are available to provide that information to you. We also would highly recommend utilizing the City of Roswell app and web service portal to report any issues or concerns. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting for March 28th, 2023. Motion of approval by Councilmember Beeson, second by Councilmember Hills. And that constitutes the approval of the minutes for the March 28th, 2023. A motion by Councilmember Beeson, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Passes unanimously. And note that Councilmember Vanstrom has joined the committee meeting. We do note under community development, we do not have any action items this evening. Under transportation, we do have a few items. Final acceptance, item number 2, final acceptance of Ashley Manor subdivision property to convert their 2 existing private streets to public roads and for the city of Roswell to assume ownership and future maintenance responsibility. At Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, good evening. We're here to talk about one of the final steps in the process for the Ashley Manor subdivision, which has been attempting to convert 2 of their private roads to public streets over the past few years. I will briefly go over the policy that they followed that was set in 2014 by the mayor and council. It was the policy and procedure on transfer of private streets to public streets. This basically gives basically the playbook for an HOA or a private neighborhood to submit a request to the city. This was basically developed because it's very common, probably a couple times a year, we hear from private subdivisions who are facing maintenance costs to upgrade their roads or paving. And they would like to see if the city can help them out or take on their roads to protect the taxpayer interest. We want to make sure that the city is not, taking on substandard roadways, and we require that they upgrade their roads or provide some kind of financial commitment before they're considered for acceptance. The policy outlines a variety of requirements. There's a large checklist, but it includes some items including the roadway pavement condition. The right-of-way widths are adequate. There's no sight distance issues. Any stormwater issues are satisfactory and are reviewed by staff. Also the sidewalks, if they're missing sidewalks that are not adequate with our current city standards, they have to retrofit them or make improvements. And other things like retaining walls are also looked at. But most importantly, they have to agree to public access, that the public is now welcome in their neighborhood if the city does ultimately take that on. This has kind of been going on for a few years, and I want to commend Ashley Manor and their HOA. They've been working with us. They've been great partners. They did originally request to convert 2 of their private streets, Ashley Manor Drive and Manor Place Drive, which is a combined length of about 0.6 miles. I have a map here in a moment. I'll show you where that's located. But what's important here tonight, this was previously approved with some conditions by the mayor and council back in November of 2021. And the point of this item this evening is to have staff verify that these conditions were met, and if the mayor and council are willing to finally accept the right-of-way transfer to the city. Here's a brief location of where they're located. It's over on Coleman Road, kind of in the western or southwestern part of the city. It's located right there between Hightower Road and Willio Road. You can see the 2 streets there in blue. And the yellow shaded area is basically the rough outline of their subdivision. Here's a couple of street view pictures we had that were taken last year. You can clearly see the new sidewalks they added. They had sidewalk on one of the sides of the roadway, but they have since had to go retrofit and add sidewalks to both sides, so they met the streetscape standards. So they did a really good job, and our inspectors looked at it and made sure everything was in order and they were ADA compliant. Here were the 4 conditions that I mentioned a moment ago that the Mayor and Council set forth in 2021. They basically had to hire an engineering firm to do a thorough assessment of the roadway to make sure it was up to modern standards. If there were any deficiencies, they were identified and brought up to modern standards. The contractor had to go through all this stuff and review everything before a land disturbance permit was issued to do the sidewalks and repairs so they can comply with everything in our UDC. That contract included a 1-year warranty period to make sure everything held up over this time. And number 3 is probably the biggest one. They had to pay basically a true-up cost of around $42,000 to go towards the future maintenance. The construction report indicated the pavement would not need to be rehabbed for 10 to 15 years, but that amount was set and paid towards future maintenance. And I did confirm receipt of the payment. I actually held the check in my hand about 2 weeks ago. So our finance department is in receipt of that payment. And then lastly, a deed of dedication was required, and the HOA has provided that. So if it is approved by the mayor and council at an upcoming council meeting, we can process that and work through our legal office and do the official transfer. So in closing, staff have confirmed that the HOA has met all of the conditions issued by the city, and we recommend the city accept the ownership of the right-of-way and any assets within the right-of-way, which includes the roadway and sidewalks. It's approximately a 50-foot swath of land on both streets. And then what the financial impact would be, we would absorb those into our future maintenance program. And as I mentioned, we've already received the payment of $42,000. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Dave, can you go back 3 slides? Oh, thank you, perfect. How cool is that? I mean, right? This is a neighborhood that put in their own sidewalks, right? So a private neighborhood said, we want sidewalks. What did they do? They came to the city, hey, want to make sure it meets your code. Boom. They put in the sidewalks. Isn't that great? That's so cool. And then go forward one. And then hats off to Ashley Manor. So this program has been in place since 2014. This is the first private subdivision, Dave, I think, in the city to actually do this. So cool. I mean, this is amazing. These folks should be, I wish they were here.
Actually, one member of the neighborhood, Rob Kalia, is here in attendance.
Rob, thank you. Appreciate what you did. Great looking stuff. And it's so excited to see that, like, forward more. Yeah. So understanding that it takes a real commitment on the private side to make things happen. If you want the city to own it, there's real cost there. And these amazing citizens did that and met the conditions that we put out there. Like, if you want us to maintain it, we can do it, but there's a cost that the rest of the taxpayers are ascribing to. And I really can't give enough credit to Ashley Manor folks and Manor Place folks for getting that. Putting in sidewalks, how cool. We hear that a lot. These folks put in their own sidewalks.
Yeah, Ashley Manor is definitely a role model for this program. And I just also want to commend other HOA president, Julia Prescott, who could not be here tonight, but she was instrumental in making this happen over the past couple of years.
Councilmember Hills?
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Yes, the sidewalks are super good looking, sexy, all of it. And the roads, the fact that they've kept up the asphalt is amazing. So before anybody scoops up all the speaking points, I just want to say this is amazing and a showstopper, and we're delighted you're one of us regular people now with a beautiful neighborhood and beautiful sidewalks. So welcome aboard. Thank you.
Councilmember Palermo?
Yeah, and actually something you'd find is actually throughout the city, probably the 90% of neighborhoods actually would love to become private. and then they find out all the costs associated with having the private road and all that, and they realize that actually there's a lot of benefits to being a city road. And of course, Ashley Manor experienced that, and we're willing to invest in coming up to the city standards. And I will point out that of course, this city is not obligated to approve it, but I feel it's the right thing to do, and I feel we should do that and appreciate their partnership in really investing in their neighborhood and wanting to put in the investment to become a part of the city roads.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Hills,
To approve.
second by Mayor Wilson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Mr. Knighton, may I recommend we open some champagne?
That's great, that's awesome, thank you. Item number 3 is consideration of a resolution to accept grant funding from the Federal Highway Administration from North Fulton Community Improvement District for the Safe Streets and Roadways for All SS4A grant in the amount of $250,000 in budget amendment 22142100508 to set up the grant. And for clarification and context, this item was unanimously approved to move forward to pursue this grant funding back in September. And now that the grant has been approved, this is the acceptance to set up the budget amendment, which is required. So, Mr. Cox, would you like to expound on this item?
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. That's a great way to explain it. As the chairman said, this was approved by the mayor and council for staff to apply for this grant last September and late summer last year. We were successful in getting the grant. It was awarded to us earlier this year, along with several other communities here in Georgia. I believe Sandy Springs also got one, and I believe Cherokee County may have also got one here in the North Metro region. So we're really excited about it. It was a $200,000 grant that's being provided by the federal government, and it does require a $50,000 local match, but the North Fulton CID has committed to pay that, so there's zero cost to the city. And what's important about this is it's basically a planning study to do a safety action plan, and that is the first step to look at all kinds of safety material that is required for a planning study. But more importantly, once that is completed, that's the next step to go after future federal dollars for actual projects. Some of those projects may include pedestrian safety, supporting the development of a bikeway network or a multi-use trail network, looking at traffic calming and speed management policies, and looking at a variety of other safety and intersection improvements around the city, not just for pedestrians and bicyclists, but for also for automobiles. So once that is completed, we can definitely pursue opportunities to leverage future federal funds to help some of our projects coming up. And just in recap, since safety is kind of the primary aspect of the study, we did go back and look at, in the past decade, we have had nearly 50 fatalities here within the city of Roswell, with about 48 crashes, and about 14 of them were pedestrian fatalities. So definitely this study would be taking a deeper dive on that moving forward. So staff is recommending entering into agreement with Federal Highway, with either the mayor or the city administrator signing that agreement, which staff are finalizing now. And then we could advertise the grant at a later date through consultant services and develop this safety action plan. And then basically this also, as the chairman said, this is actually primarily for the budget amendment that is required, so we can accept the funds at a later date and process them through the budget process. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cox, how long will this take to get the plan done?
It's a planning study, so if we can get it underway later this summer, I would imagine it'd take probably about 9 months. Probably it'd be less than a year, and then we could go after federal funds in a future round over the 5-year period. So we'd have 3 more opportunities, we think, to go after federal funds for other projects, like construction.
So about this time next year.
Yeah, we hope so, yes.
Councilmember Beeson.
Will the use or the appropriation of these funds be allocated to the area specifically where those fatalities have occurred or the crashes have occurred?
Well, it depends. There's been fatalities all over the city for a variety of reasons. Some were preventable, some may not have been. So we're going to take a deep dive on that, and we'll be looking at projects across the city that may be applicable for federal funds. I know one thing we have heard from our conversations with Federal Highway is they are looking at giving priority to projects that are in some of our economically disadvantaged areas of the city, We have one area of the Roswell that qualifies under that banner as being economically disadvantaged from a census perspective. So any projects in that zone would likely get a leg up, but I believe any project in the city is fair game.
Councilmember Palermo.
This is great. When we were moving this forward in September, or approving this in September, I didn't feel that optimistic, just given obviously a lot of communities across the country interested in this large amount of funding available. So I'm really glad to see this, and frankly thought 50,000 to spending 50,000 and getting 200,000 was great, and then now even better knowing we don't even have to spend that 50,000. So I think this is really exciting. Wouldn't there be benefit, given that really in creating this plan is the real benefit is opening us up to get a lot more funding from that bigger pool? Wouldn't there be a benefit of somewhat trying to start really as soon as possible? I heard you say end of summer, but do we know when that first round would happen? Because we'd want to make sure that we fully have a plan completed for whenever that first round is available.
I believe the next round will occur later this summer, so we will not have the action plan completed by then, but it's a 5-year authorization, so there'll be multiple rounds coming down the road. And a lot of communities don't have an action plan. You have to have this in place before you can go after that funding. So, a lot of these grant opportunities everyone applies for, but there's prerequisites. So we'll have that in place next year.
So obviously, I definitely support this and want to move this forward tonight, but I'd also love to see just anything we can do to accelerate that safety plan to really make us as available for as many of the rounds as possible now that we're eligible.
Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
Mayor Wilson, the first thing that came across my mind when he was doing this description was this is a nice chunk of change to tackle your speeding initiative in the city. So here we go.
Well, thank you. I think you're exactly right. I think it's addressing something that the entire body, council, obviously the mayor and council, along with when we incorporated the TAC, the RTAC. Like one of our chief's hopes and directives is calming measures, right? Calming measures throughout the city. And I think you're right in line with that, Will.
Good thought, yes. Councilmember Vanstrom.
I'm going to echo Councilman Palermo's question and maybe get a little more definition. I know you really don't like me because I always try to make things happen faster. What would hold us up by having the study done by the end of the summer?
We have to get the grant and the funding in place first, so that'll probably take a couple months at minimum to get that authorization and get the funding transferred. And then we could be working behind the scenes to tee up the procurement process. So as soon as the money's in hand, we could probably do a notice to proceed. So we'll work at the staff level with our procurement office to expedite that as rapidly as possible. So there's minimal delay.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Beeson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 4 is consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to authorize execution of a task order in an amount not to exceed $269,825 with the city's on-call consultant Barge Design Solutions for the design of the Norcross Street Bridge Replacement Project. Councilmember Beeson.
It's becoming a tradition. I'm going to be stepping out and recusing myself. This is the same on-call contract that we previously discussed about Barge, so this is a continuation of the same contract, recusing for the same purposes. I do work with Barge, not with transportation, but in another industry.
All right, thank you for that notification and acknowledgement.
So
Mr. Nicholas?
this item is to issue a task order for the Norcross Street Bridge Replacement, which is a T-SPLOST 2 project. Some of the items to be completed under this task order are concept development, database preparation, which includes topography survey and subsurface utility engineering, as well as an environmental screening, bridge hydraulic study, and public involvement. The Norcross Bridge over Hogwallow Creek was constructed approximately 72 years ago, and in the most recent inspection did receive a fair rating through the GDOT inspections. It was definitely time to replace the bridge. As part of the concept development, we will look at pedestrian facilities as well as inclusion of aesthetics and lighting. And as well, our consultant is going to look at accelerated bridge construction methods to see if we can construct it as quickly as possible. Because right now we are looking at a 2 to 6 month closure on Norcross. So we're going to try to see what we can do to limit that. Just a quick overview. This is where the bridge is located over Hogwallow Creek. The roundabout at Grimes Bridge and Warsaw is to your right, to the east, and then City Hall and Fraser Street is to your left. This is a street level view of the bridge that will be replaced. Just a quick note here, this existing pedestrian bridge will go away as part of the project, as the pedestrian improvements will be included in the actual new bridge. We will be looking as part of the concept to see if this existing pedestrian bridge can be repurposed and used elsewhere throughout the city. We've got a couple ideas maybe for some spots in some parks. So we may be able to cut this in half, transport it, and weld it back together and repurpose it somewhere else in the city.
So with the pedestrian improvements, would the design include a sidewalk on both sides of the bridge?
Likely at least a multi-use trail on one side and a sidewalk on the other.
Okay, so a minimum of sidewalk on both
Right.
sides. Thank you.
And this is just another view of the bridge from our drone, just a little bit underneath the bridge. So staff recommends approval of this task order to get the concept underway. It is anticipated to last about 9 months from notice to proceed to approval of the concept, and we do have funding available in the T-SPLOST 2 account. Yeah.
One other thing I just want to mention is this project may be eligible for federal funding in the future. The feds do have a bridge program that we are very interested in to pursue bridge maintenance and replacement. Multiple bridges around the city, this would be an ideal candidate for one. So we could get PE and then design ready using T-SPLOST dollars, and at a later date, if it's the will of the mayor and council, pursue federal dollars for the bridge replacement down the road. So there's some potential cost saving there.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. I just want to be sure that our new bridge aesthetics are incorporated as you move forward into the design, so.
Very good point. Yeah.
We'll be bringing that back to the mayor and council at a later date, once the concept and those kind of features will be discussed.
Yep. Mayor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just kind of to echo Christine's point, we talked about this earlier, got to make sure that on all the bridge designs, that they are fully incorporated in the branding aesthetics plan. Second part is, when will we know on the Fed side, because I think the favorability picks up because of the pedestrian piece of this, correct? And I think to Michael's point is to make sure that obviously having a multimodal on one side and a pedestrian on the other side, that's the current plan.
That's what we envision, and you're correct, that the federal program, if you do want to go after federal funds, it does require bike ped facilities beyond the bridge.
So that's a big deal. So do we have some sense of that? Like, are we going to be able to deliver that, do you think, or do we know at this juncture?
We're planning to include those features in their draft concept for either sidewalk or multi-use trail or both.
This is where I always get confused a little bit on the transportation projects, and sometimes all the stuff that keeps coming back to us and back to us and back to us. Like, one of the last step on this is, and time delay always works against us. So a perfect example, like, last thing on there is public input. The public's already voted on this, right? T-SPLOST 2, they said, you have our approval to get this done, right? What does that mean when you put that on there, you say public input?
So I think the public input would be maybe looking at some of the aesthetic features. Right now, I mean, we have an idea, as far as the stack stone, that would probably be the going in position until the branding I guess manual or whatever is complete.
Well, Greg, is the law telling you, is the law telling you that, hey, we gotta add public input to this at the end? Is that a tradition here in the city of Roswell that you feel like you just have to torture yourself on every public transportation project? Where is this being driven?
If it's locally funded, that would be something that would be to the option of the mayor and council if they want to hold any public hearings, or we just go straight into it following policies that are already adopted by the mayor and council. If you go through the federal process, there may be some other requirements that may include public meetings at a later date. So that's something we'll have to review and consider if we go down that avenue in the future.
Yeah, I just think again, when we talk about this a lot, from the standpoint of efficiency, bridge has got to be replaced. Like, that's not up for debate. This is going to be an increasing traffic corridor, both from a vehicle perspective and from a walking and bike perspective. The rating on this is dropping and dropping quickly. It has to be addressed. The sooner the better. The sooner you deal with this, the better. We're developing a branding and aesthetics plan because we believe the city wants that. We've been given permission to do that, we believe, from our fellow residents. And incorporating that into the overall piece, as Christine said, is important. So sometimes I get scared for us when we start. I feel like sometimes we make things harder on ourselves when we already know what the direction is. We know what to do. We know it's in the best interest of the city and our fellow residents. And sometimes I feel like we get scared to say, hey, we're going to do it, but we won't do it unless we get public input. Well, then I would say, well, the public's already told you clearly. They voted on it. So I just,
Yeah, no.
I hate to see us sometimes keep stepping on our toes a little bit on this piece.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. So, yeah, and actually two ways for aspects you've mentioned the public's weighed in on. One is T-Splosh 2, so they've already told us we need to replace this bridge and that's going to be a part of T-Splosh 2. And number two, the bike ped master plan, which had an enormous amount of public input, and a part of that is that there'd be a multi-use trail on one side of this road. So that's already a part that's already been factored in with the public. So I just wanted to mention, so certainly glad that you mentioned one side would have a sidewalk, one side would have a multi-use trail. The other piece for a lot of discussion we've had is around lane widths, knowing that the way the traffic can go. We actually all witnessed when we opened up that new crosswalk, there was that truck that came bombing through where, thank God, there was nobody in the street. So I would think in the design, I would think we'd want to have the lanes as narrow as possible as well. So we're going to have sidewalks, we're going to have pedestrian uses on both sides, and that we would have as narrow as possible lanes. And I don't just mean with paint, but I mean with actual footprint. I would think, based on all the conversations we've been talking about for vision and goals.
Definitely.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, Councilmember Hall.
And just to add to that, so that if we cannot have the legal 4-foot bike lanes, that we have the shoulders as wide as possible, because that is a very heavily bicycled path.
Thank you. Councilmember Morthland.
You were saying about the metal bridge, cutting it up and taking it away and trying to repurpose somewhere else. Is that right? The first thing I saw when I saw that was the skate park that's part of the parks plan. So please give the Recreation and Parks Department first dibs on that, because we can certainly put that to good use as soon as the skate park comes online.
Yeah, they would be the first ones we would contact, to see where their highest priority is to put that.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Palermo. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, thank you. We do have one last item, a finance item, given the timing of where we are here. Item number 5, consideration of a contract amendment with B&W Mechanical Contractors for citywide standby plumbing services to increase the annual not-to-exceed amount by $100,000 to a new annual not-to-exceed amount of $245,000. Mr. Luckett is here to provide that information. I think we had a significant weather event earlier that is precipitating this request. So Mr. Luckett will walk us through this, and I'll also say that one of the great benefits of navigating the zero-based budget process has illuminated a number of different items that we need to consolidate. And so, well, I'll preface the discussion in that regard. So, Mr. Luckett.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Good evening, everyone. We are requesting approval for a contract amendment with an on-call plumbing contractor that was approved back in January of 2022. This is B&W Mechanical Contractors. This is a citywide on-call plumbing services contract, so it's only used on an as-needed basis. Originally, like I said, this was approved back in January of 2022 in an amount not to exceed $75,000. Because of usage beyond what was anticipated, there was an internally approved contract amendment to increase that by $70,000, but as we've gone through this fiscal year, the usage of that contract has continued to increase. So we are requesting Mayor and Council approval to amend the contract to add an additional $100,000 to the contract. So that would be a not to exceed amount of $245,000. Again, this work is on an as needed basis, and the work is constrained by the available repair and maintenance budget that exists across the various departments. The agenda item before you can see we provided some background information on the 4 different departments that have used that to this point in the fiscal year and some of the major repairs that have happened. And to Mr. Knighton's point, the freeze that we had in December increased that quite a bit. So.
Thank you, Mr. Luckett. Any questions, comments from Mayor and Council? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
Thank you. Motion to approve this item.
Motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Well, that does conclude our Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting for this evening. We thank all of those in attendance, and we'll entertain a motion of adjournment. Motion to adjourn by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Morthland. All in favor? Thank you.
Finally, you're elected.